al divrei Torah.
Amen.
And whoever has a bagel, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Motzi Lechem Min Haaretz.
Amen.
Okay. Someone else is here. Do you want to?
I say a slightly different prayer for the
Last Stoke with your return.
Yeah.
Different. It's all good.
What are the two English meanings?
Art scroll. You probably it was in the art scroll.
Enrichment, Enlightenment, Transformation. Rabbi Yisroel Cutler, the spiritual leader of Chabad of Cary, North Carolina, guides anyone who has been searching for a meaningful life and conscious living. Join our discussions about the mundane, our daily activities, and then infuse every day with a spiritual twist from the inspired sages of the Talmud and Jewish mysticism, which many call Kabbalah. We learn from the root source of all religious monotheistic traditions and delve into the symbolism and levels of meaning from biblical stories.
A very good morning to everyone, both of our live crowd here at Chabad of Cary, as well as those that are tuning in from all over the world. If you are tuning in, we would love you to let us know, send us a chat. Questions are also more than welcome. It's so neat for us when we hear from people around the world that are asking questions. So by all means, ask your questions and let us know that you are listening. And the live stream is available because of Nissan Communications, who graciously hosts us every week. And you can support their hosting the program by clicking the donate button on the homepage at nissancommunications.com. We're in lesson 1. We're going to the beginning, which is actually last week's parsha, but the message is not pertaining to any parsha. It's a message that is we all deal with. Anyone that has a leadership position certainly deals with this, but really everyone. We're always making decisions. We're always giving advice. We're always asked for our input on something. And one of the challenges we often have is this coming from a truly objective place? You know those times someone asks you a question and you answer, and while you're answering, you're thinking to yourself, I know why I'm saying what I'm saying. There's some personal, not that I'm saying the wrong answer. I might be giving the right answer, but you have that feeling from the get-go that maybe there's a little bit of personal, bias somehow involved in this. And it's like, all right, what do I do now? Do I say that? Do I not? So we're going to see in the Torah portion when this comes to light. It's in last week's Torah portion, a very famous story. Page 1. It's one of the few times in the Torah where something is asked of Moses and he doesn't know the answer. All right? Doesn't know the answer. He has to take it to higher authority. Here goes. Text 1 on page 4. Brian, why don't you begin? Tzlafchad is the name of the fellow. Yeah.
The daughters of Tzlafchad, the son of Hefer, the son of Gilead, the son of Mechor, the son of Mansiah, and the families of Mansiah, of the son of Joseph, came forward, and his daughters' names were Maha, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Sirah.
Anyone need to know names for their children or grandchildren? You have it. The truth is, some of these Tirzah did become a Jewish name. Noah. This is a girl's Noah. And up until today, by the way, there are Noahs that are girls. It's different than Noah. This is in the Hebrew. This is Noah.
So is this a hey?
Yeah. This is Noah even in the Hebrew. So these two names, Noah and Tirzah, actually are Jewish names until today.
They stood before Moses and before Eleazar the Kazan.
The Kohen.
Kohen,
Moses' brother had already passed away. So who's the new high priest? His son, Eleazar. Okay.
Oh, okay. Before the chieftains and the entire congregation at the entrance of the tent of meeting, saying, Our father died in the desert, but he was not in the assembly that banded together against God in Korach's assembly. For he died for his own sin, and he had no sons. Why should our father's name be eliminated from his family because he had no sons? Give us a position along with our father's brothers. So Moses brought their case before God, and God spoke to Moses, saying, help me here.
Slavchad.
Slechad's daughters speak justly. You had certainly given them, you shall certainly give them a portion of inheritance along with their father's brothers, and you shall transfer their father's inheritance to them. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a man dies and has no son, you shall transfer his inheritance to his daughter.
Okay, and that was the law. I should note that even in the event, this is something that is often not understood, even when there are sons, okay, often according to biblical law, the daughters actually fared much better because the son had this obligation to give the daughters basically a huge stipend of their living expenses and whatnot from the estate. So they ended up not inheriting land. What they got, they married, was basically full support. So you actually had many instances in which the daughters might have done better than the boys. That's not the point in this story. In this story there was no boys, and they said, why should no one get his land? We should get the land. And this was a new case. This was not something Moshe had ever dealt with. Notice, Moshe doesn't, it's not a complaint. They're asking a question in Torah. Why is it that girls cannot inherit? And what's interesting is Moshe doesn't deliberate. He doesn't, open up some books and peer into what the Talmud has. Okay, I know there's no Talmud yet, but usually Moshe, there's no deliberation. It's immediately he takes his.
Go ask the boss.
Go ask the boss. He asks God. Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if he didn't know the answer, but he felt that the people wouldn't accept it if it didn't come from God. So he said, "Let me go ask God right away," knowing that it was a major upheaval of the existing order.
Interesting. Because that's really our question. Why is there no deliberation? Why does Moshe immediately? So you're saying maybe he knew the answer, and often answers, we know that the Torah does not spell everything else out. There's a lot of logic involved, and look, there has to be someone who inherited daughters. That's fairly logical. Why not? But he didn't. He immediately went to God. So it is interesting here.
But it makes sense because this could be by some quarters controversial. And
in ancient times, yeah.
And having a higher authority would help.
Okay.
And for women, it has to be the most liberating thing ever.
Yeah,
Because women couldn't be citizens if they didn't own land.
Yeah, and this is really in ancient times when land was everything, and the man, it was a man's world in terms of a job.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very fascinating. How you have thousands of years ago the Torah. I'm saying this. So why is what?
I mean, it's too bad we didn't really know this, because certainly we should have pushed our efforts.
Yeah. It's nice. It's a very.
I mean,
it's
really,
an
I
interesting
only found
story.
out we could own property after the Equal Rights Amendment.
There we go.
Isn't this after there was a rebellion that they questioned Moses' authority?
Yes.
And so even more so that
he wants to sort of, I'm not going to make a controversial statement over here. I'm going to let God sort of judge this one. But Rashi is bothered by that. Rashi is bothered by the fact, how come Moshe doesn't know this answer? There must have been countless halachic questions that were posed to Moses over a 40-year period in the Torah. We have one other time only where Moshe is not sure the answer, and that is when there are Jews that say we want an opportunity to do the Passover, and they were impure and they couldn't do it. And there too, he asked God. That case is a little different. Moses on his own couldn't make up a new holiday. Remember, there was that second Passover that we. Yeah. So that case, I understand the need. This case is more, look, it's real estate, it's financial. There's a lot more logic in play over here. It's not ritual law, it is inheritance. Why did Moshe have to take the case up to God? So Rashi, the foremost Jewish commentator, is bothered by this question. He gives two answers. Judy, text 2.
Text 2. So Moses brought their case. The law eluded him, and here he was punished for crowning himself with authority by saying, "And the case that is too difficult for you, bring to me."
So answer number 1 is this was a punishment. Much earlier in the Torah, Moses' father-in-law suggested a new judicial system. If you remember, he said, let's have lots of courts, And we'll start off with more simple judges, and as cases get more and more complex, they will go higher up until only when Moshe told it over to the people, the way he worded it is, the case that's too difficult for you, bring to me. And it said those words, although the message might have been right, the words could have been said in a slightly
Gentler way.
gentle, more humble manner. And because of that, one interpretation in the oral tradition is, oh, you think you know everything, we'll have a time later on where the answer will elude you, the answer will slip. So that is one of the oral tradition's answers. This was punishment, or sort of after he said that, it was, all right, I'll show you a time when you don't know everything. Yeah.
I find myself wondering, a punishment imposed by whom?
More of a lesson. I don't know if punishment is the right
Yeah.
word. It's sort of God giving him a lesson that to speak with a little bit more sensitivity, even if that was true, it's Hashem who grants us the wisdom, right? God grants us the understanding to know something. So God says, in this case, I will conceal that from you. It sounds like a lesson God is giving him in having this hidden from him, or
I'm the more Peshat guy.
yeah, okay.
But that seems kind of subtle to me. For the earlier interpretation we came up with was a combination of, this is a big one.
What is a big one?
Granting women's rights.
Oh, yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of controversy. Oh, and by the way, my reputation is not great right now. Maybe I should both check with the boss and have the boss.
That works as far as Pshat goes.
Yeah.
That works and the Torah has many interpretations. There's not, Rashi brings two. We suggested a third around the table, and we're going to get to that fourth soon. So there's no one right answer, but you're right, Brian. That's definitely Pshat. Yeah, Marty.
But Rashi, the answer could be, well, they're so subtle. God had a lot more easier ways to teach that lesson, because that lesson could have been lost on Moses, just like it was lost on me. And so,
Right.
done that.
May not have picked up on that.
So
That's true.
that could have been more direct.
Very right. Because if you are teaching a lesson, right, if the goal is to teach a lesson, unless you explain why you're doing what you're doing, the person might end up messing up that lesson. All right, second interpretation, Judy?
Another interpretation, this passage ought to have been written through Moses, but Zelophehad's daughters were meritorious, so it was written through them.
So it's not so much Moshe doing something wrong and the info being hidden from them. It's in their credit that they initiated this novel teaching in Torah, and the Torah wants to attribute the teaching to them instead of it coming out in a way of God said to Moshe to tell the Jewish people that if someone doesn't have a son, then women inherit. It could have just been a regular downwards law. This was supposed to be a grassroots law. Why? To show what righteous women they were, that they merited to be the instruments through which this teaching was initiated.
I mean,
So-
this had to be just huge in those days.
Yeah.
Because, what women were no more than a cow.
Well,
Now, this rule, though, to be fair, isn't full equality.
correct.
But it is a
But
big step
just
forward.
owning land is
It's
a
a big step
huge
forward.
thing for women. I
True.
mean,
And and like I said earlier, even when they did not, there were many laws in place to protect them. It wasn't that they owned it the same way as men, but it was that they had to be supplied from that inheritance, so on and so forth. Okay. By the way, I'm going to skip the optional section 3A, 3B, but there's one other time in history where someone said something a little bit not sensitive and humble enough, and God gave them that lesson. So there is a precedent, and that is when Samuel, there's a time where Samuel says, Anochi haroeh, I'm the seer, I'm the prophet. Okay? He uses an expression in text 3a, I shall tell you I'm the seer. So God also gives him a lesson that when Samuel goes to anoint the Jewish king, he's told that Jethro has a bunch of children, and he assumes who's the one that's going to be the king, this tall, handsome guy who is Jethro's oldest. And then God says, no, that's not the right one. It's actually King David who's supposed to be king. And he got that one wrong also, making a snap judgment. So there is one other time in Torah where we have that idea of someone making a statement that's not so humble, and afterwards them being taught a lesson.
So
Yeah.
So could it be that Rashi is actually more learned than I am?
Could possibly be.
Okay. There's another. Any comments from?
I was thinking of the idea that God has said that women shall also inherit, and it's so reasonable because women are the progenitors. They will have men children. They will continue. So it just.
But that's more of a reason how come Moshe couldn't come up with this on his own, right? If it is so rational and so logical. Any questions from? Right. Any comments from the online, Debbie?
Nothing yet, but I'm hoping she will answer. She will ask some questions.
All right. The Midrash gives one other interpretation: humility. All right. Let's do text 4. Do you mind reading text 4?
Sure.
The Midrash. Reish Lakish, who was one of the sages, he gave this interpretation.
Moses really knew this law, but the initial claim was presented in the court of judges of 10. These judges said, this is a matter of a state law, and it is not within our jurisprudence. We will defer it to a greater court. The daughters presented their case to the judges of 50. They saw how the judges of 10 afforded them such honor, so they too said, this is a greater court than us. There is a greater court than us. The judges of hundreds did the same, as did the judges of thousands and tribal princes. They all gave a similar answer, not wishing to rule on a matter ahead of the greater court. So they went before Eleazar, the high priest, and he said, Moses, our master, is here. Go to him. They all came before Moses. Moses saw how everyone had demonstrated respect to the greater party and said, if I render the ruling, I will be taking the greatness unto myself. So, he said to them, there is someone yet greater than me. Thus Moses brought their case before God.
This is the opposite of Rashi almost. And Moshe did not want to be, all right, I'm right. This is where it all stops. If everyone else is going to someone higher, Moshe also feels it necessary to follow that course of action and to show that ultimately it is Hashem who rules when it comes to Torah. So, yeah.
Was the court 10 to 100 to 1,000 princes? I didn't think the court structure was set up that way. When Jethro was
Jethro, it says 10. Yeah, I don't remember the princes being there. But I do remember those numbers, 10 and 50 and 100 and thousands. Those are there.
Why Jethro?
Moses' father-in-law, a long time ago, was the one who suggested having a system of higher and lower courts.
I thought it was over 1,000, then over 100, then over. I thought it was that.
Oh, the judges of 10. Well, that's what I mean. Judges of 10 mean.
But that would
We
be.
thought it was opposite, that goes to the thousands first, then the hundreds, then 10.
Right.
Right, this says it goes to 10, then 100, then 1,000,
That is a good point.
right? That's what I think you were saying.
Do you mind getting a Chumash?
The amount of people.
Lowered as you get higher.
Correct.
And this way it seems to get bigger.
That's a good question. Look it up, Hal. I don't know the answer to that. Okay. So we have 4 suggestions so far, and I just need to get my charger to keep this alive. Moments.
I don't think that means the size of the court. Does it mean the size of the court? The number of judges in the court?
Yeah, that's what I don't. I mean, I could be absolutely wrong. What a shock.
But it probably just means that all the people around them felt the same way.
Right, but those numbers were given earlier, and the question is the meaning of the numbers. The beginning of Yitro. It's the beginning of Yitro.
You know, has anyone ever explained why the world adopted the Hammadi code rather than The Jewish, looks like we had law before.
Hammurabi Code.
Well, a lot of the Western law today is founded upon Judaic principles.
But isn't the Code of Hammurabi, isn't that Muslim?
No, but it's Babylonian, right?
Babylonian.
Yeah, Hammurabi.
I
thought it was
you would
Egyptian.
think that they got it from.
A lot of Western law and principles have Jewish origins. Absolutely. So we have 4 answers given so far. Rashi gave 2. A punishment for Moses, A. B is allowing the daughters to initiate the law, was B. We have humility of Moshe, and then the answer suggested around the table. This was a big breakthrough, and in order to not have any questions on it, best to leave it up to God as well. Now we're going to go to another answer, and that is that of Rabbeinu Bachaya, and he answers it by taking a look at the way the daughters of Tzlafchad presented their case to Moses. Go back. What did they say? How did they frame what happened to their father? Okay.
Our father died in the desert, but he was not
In the assembly that banded together against God in Korach's rebellion.
Right.
Why is that important to the discussion? They say we don't have a father, he passed away. They say he was not one of the ones, Moses, who passed away with Korach. It also seems to suggest that he didn't die together with everyone else either. He had his own business. Why did they mention that he was not one of the ones who passed away with Korach?
Well, was he in the same family as many in this Korach group? So that
he was
it
a
might be
Kohen.
implied.
No, Joseph, he was from Joseph, Menashe.
Oh.
Most of Korach's
right.
group were either Levites or they were from the tribe of Reuven, who was the oldest, and they were upset at the fact that some of those privileges were taken away from them. He's from Menashe. So that is odd in the way they present their claim. Oh, but don't you worry, he wasn't one of the ones that rebelled against you, Moshe.
That would matter.
You want
That's
comments?
Yeah.
Debbie's saying Moses had to preserve his image and not have any misconceptions. There were many instances when Moses had to show his purity. Just this minute, oh, never mind, that's something about her, but the nurse. So Moses had to show his purity in many instances. That's what Debbie's saying.
And therefore, by taking it up to God, this was a way to show that there was no that he was completely pure in the decision that he said. Now, why is that especially important? Because of this statement, we were not amongst the ones. He was not amongst one of the ones that fought with Korach. That's an important line.
And
Here is why. Let's do one more text and then we'll do more.
That makes sense, because basically he would be more favorable. If they were the daughters that came from someone who got killed, he might say, well, it might decide the otherwise. That's what. I guess.
That's why they said it. But once they did say, don't worry, he was a big fan of yours, Moses. He was not one of the ones that rebelled with Korach, and we can understand why they would say that. But once Moshe does hear that, ooh, there's a problem.
But I think there's another issue,
Okay.
which is not only don't be biased against us because he was rebellious,
Okay.
a rebel. In fact, he was not a rebel, but that's important because all the rebels may well have lost their rights and inheritances.
Okay.
But what about the sin of the father, you know?
But I think that was he suggested as a minor matter.
He died for
It's
his
suggested.
own sin.
Right.
Well, it was not one of the rebellious ones. And maybe, whether it was. The commentators might discuss what that is. Some say he was, if you remember, after the period of the spies, if you remember. Right after the spy story happened, the Jews were told they would spend 40 years in the desert. What is the very next story in the Torah? We don't discuss it much. Very next story. A group of Jews say, oh, we're ready to go into Israel right now. And Moshe says, no. What happened. There's ramifications over here. Destiny has changed. You can't just go up. If you go up, the ark is not going with you. And the blessing of God. And they don't, and they ignore that and they still go up. And they end up being killed. Now, you could say that they wanted to show teshuvah, they wanted to show repentance for what had happened. You could say they loved Israel so much, and maybe that same feeling got passed on to their daughters in a positive way. So many, but at the end of the day, they didn't do what's right. You know, it's almost like when we make a mistake, yes, there's always a path of teshuvah, repentance, but sometimes that's now going to look a little bit different than had we not made the mistake. We can't always just pretend nothing happened and go along that same. No, something happened. There can be a path of repentance, but that's going to look different right now. So so according to many, he was in that group. He was in that group, not Korach's group. Yes.
So it also says, why should our father's name be eliminated from his family because he had no son? Give us a portion along with our father's brothers. I don't understand that. Does that mean that once his portion would go to his father's, their father's brothers, it would be as though their father never lived? Or, and if they kept it, then because they had the land, their father's name continues?
Right. I mean, in an agrarian society, and especially in biblical Israel, land was a big deal. Okay? I know what you're saying. There's so many other ways to remember someone's name. But you have to remember that land was eternal. Remember the laws of Jubilee? The laws of Jubilee, any land that got sold eventually would return back to the ancestral families. So there was something about land that was eternal. People would always know this is the Goldstein's, land. And this real estate was associated with that family forever. And that would be a tribute, in a sense, to, that would be a way everyone would remember the ancestor. And so by not having that, by this family not having that, that would hurt the memory of their father. But I see what you're saying, Judy. There are, of course, other ways to remember their father. It's not that if we don't get the land, no one will ever remember our father. However, look, in those days, especially with the laws of land and the way it was eternal, it was a way that you would have a sort of eternal status.
And rules of inheritance. If women didn't get to inherit, he had no sons, so then it would go to his brothers, and women would be totally out.
And that family line would not continue in the land. So here's the way Rabbeinu Bachaya answers why Moshe did not take the case himself. It was because he may have had a bias once they made the statement about Korach. Once they said he was actually with you, not only that, with the spies he actually wanted to go into the land of Israel. They loved, so here goes. And the way we're going to introduce this is with a few other laws in Judaism about this. Text 5a.
The king may not be given a seat on the Sanhedrin, nor may the king or the high priest be members of the board for the intercalculation of the year. The king, on account of Afansia, the upkeep of the military, the high priest, because of the code.
Let me explain that.
Yeah.
Today we have a fixed Jewish calendar, okay? Every couple of years we have what's called a leap year. A leap year doesn't add February 29th. What does the leap year add in Jewish calendar?
A month.
An entire month, okay? Usually it's every 3 years. Sometimes it's not, by the way. And an example of that would be next year. Next year is a leap year on the Jewish calendar, just interesting. And if you remember, when was the last time we had a leap year? Last year. That is why we're adding an extra month, and we're going to have holidays super late. Super, super late. Remember when we were super early and like Thanksgiving was Hanukkah? Mm-hmm. Now we're going to have super late. Hanukkah, not this Hanukkah, but the following Hanukkah is going to end on January 1st. Pesach next year is going to end May 1st.
Oh, that's beautiful.
In any event.
Really in spring,
But it's fixed that usually every 3 years, if anyone here likes astronomy, you can do the exact system. It's actually there are 7 leap years every 19 years.
Yeah.
That's the system. Okay. But in the old days, there wasn't a fixed calendar. In biblical times, there was no fixed calendar. What did they do? Sort of like the early Groundhog Day. If it was still winter and what was happening, Passover was supposed to be here. It's like, oh no, we can't have Passover. The Torah says Passover has to be in the spring. We need to delay it. And it would vary. Sometimes you could have a lot of leap years. It was not this regular system. It would depend on the year. They looked for a few different criteria. One of them was Passover in the spring, but there were some other criteria as well. What this law says in the Talmud is a king cannot be one of the people who decide when the leap year happens. Why not? He has a bias, the upkeep of the military. The high priest also cannot be on the team. Why? Because of the cold. What does that mean? This is very interesting. 5b. Where are we up to in the reading? Let's go back.
Oh.
Okay. Hal.
On account of
The Asfania.
the king pays his soldiers a fixed amount for the entire year, and he preferred that every year be intercalculated.
He gets 13 months of due service with a 12-month paycheck. Yeah.
The high priest, he does not wish for the year to be calculated because of the cold, or he needs to wash his hands and feet 10 times and dip in the mikveh 5 times on Yom Kippur. The year isn't calculated the month of Tishrei, and the holiday of Yom Kippur will be observed deeper into the autumn, most likely resulting in cold.
Now, the Tosfot gives another interpretation. They would walk in the temple barefoot on Yom Kippur, and the floor was cold. Now, stop here for a moment. We're talking about the high priest over here. Do you think that that's what's on his mind over here, that the mikvah shouldn't be too cold? Remember, there's no heated mikvahs in those days. That's his biggest issue over here. The mikvah shouldn't be too... This is Yom Kippur. It's the holiest day of the year. And the person who has this holy job representing the Jewish people, he's going to have a bias because he doesn't want his feet to be cold.
He's avoiding the appearance of bias.
He sounds like me.
He's avoiding the appearance, and this is just how far Torah wants us to go. Look, at least acknowledge that you might be biased. At least understand that this is part of human nature, that when we make decisions, we are biased. The other one, the king, in the back of his mind, it'll be an extra plus that, for the coffers, it'll be a little easier this year. I like that one. That one is easier than the weather one, right? The extra month of paycheck. But the fact that this is part of Torah and this is part of Talmud shows us that Torah is very realistic on human nature, right? Human nature is that we are biased. And we need to acknowledge that that's okay. But when we are asked to make a decision, we need to understand that there might be other factors at play here, at least recognize them. So,
But
what?
It's interesting to say that because even though I think, if I remember correctly, Moses was trying still to defend those people that were against him, and he was still out of love, I guess, was still trying to, so it doesn't seem to me like he was holding a grudge.
He may not have, but how will this be seen by other people over here?
Right, but why did the daughters say that?
They may have said it, as you said, because they didn't want Moshe to get back at them if he was part of the Korah's rebellion.
Right.
Maybe they didn't know. They were doing what they were supposed to, which is present your case and advocate as much as possible. Moshe, however, says, according to Rabbeinu Bachaya, and whether or not, again, you want to accept this as pshat or not is not the point. The point here is this is one of the ways of learning in Torah, because in our own lives we need to realize how much we are influenced. And Torah acknowledges human nature. We know in a few weeks we'll read the parsha that talks to judges, and it says, Lo sikach shochad, don't take a bribe. And it says, for a bribe does what? Anyone remember the words of the Torah there? Blinds the eye of the righteous. Mm-hmm. So even amongst the righteous, for sure, it blinds. And Torah goes as far as saying the definition of a bribe may not only mean money, but it could be that, well, here's the next text 6. Yeah, I'll just summarize. Because of time, I want to go fast over here. There's a story. Shmuel is crossing a river, and a man comes and helps him, sort of holds his hand, does a favor for him. And Shmuel meets him. What are you doing in town? I came here because I have a court case. Guess what Shmuel did right afterwards? He was supposed to be the judge. He says, I'm not taking on the case. Because we had a relationship. He did a favor to me. I'm no longer in a position to do it. And there's a few different examples in the Talmud when someone gave his Truma. Truma was the food that you gave to a Kohen. It was the tithing. Not the tithing. It was the tithing was the 10%. Truma was another gift you gave to the Kohen. Gave it to the Kohen. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. But then that same person afterwards ends up being the judge. And it's, all right, I don't feel I'm the best person to handle this. And you find someone else to do it. So Rabbeinu Bachaya explains that was the reason why Moshe was reluctant to take on the case himself. Text 7. Pam.
Yeah. Some explain that because the daughters mentioned the fact that their father was not part of the group that rebelled against Moses, Moses felt a degree of affinity to them. If he would have ruled in the matter, it would be akin to accepting a verbal bribe. For this reason, Moses abstained from issuing a rule.
So the idea here is if Moshe was 120 years at the end of his life, very righteous life, you know, so someone who was the communicator of Torah to us, the end of his life, and yet even he didn't want to take on a case because of a possible bias. How much more so do we in our own lives have to be recognize that? And this, of course, has many different ramifications in our lives. One of them is when someone else asks us for advice, we should make sure that that advice that we're giving them is purely for the other person. And there's not inside of us any bias. Now, nothing is wrong if we feel that there is a personal incentive to do what? Reveal it. And that's fine. You know, by the way, you know, I really would love you to move to this area also because you know, you're telling them what a great job market there is in Raleigh, and I don't know what you're telling someone they have to move here, and then, you know, by the way, I don't know if this was influential in what I said or not, but I would really love you to be here for X, Y, and Z. And that's fine. But we're supposed to be aware of that when we're giving advice, to realize that it's very hard to be truly objective. It's very hard.
The NPR model.
Which is?
They're always revealing whenever they have any interest.
Interesting.
You know, like, you know, we're partially owned by whatever, or you know, they never hide their side connection.
Who is that?
NPR.
But it's a nice way to, you know, to live your life. Just that Yashar, and obviously everyone takes your words that much more seriously when you do disclose that, and you're being honest with yourself, not just someone else, yourself. The Rebbe, however, when he spoke about this issue, didn't only use it as far as giving advice to someone else. This is most important, not when it comes to giving advice to someone else, but rather giving advice to whom? Yourself. And this was something that the Rebbe pleaded for all of his Hasidim, all of his followers, to have someone else that they would ask for advice, just because human nature is that we're biased towards ourselves. We just see things through a skewed lens. It's not bad, it's not good, it's a fact of life. So one of the things that the Rebbe would often point to as a text in Ethics of Our Fathers, text 11. And in text 11, the Mishnah writes as follows, text 11. Jersey?
Rabbi Joshua, the son of Berechiah, would say, assume for yourself a Rab, master or teacher, acquire for yourself a friend, and judge every man to the side of men.
So Rabbi Yoshua taught three things. Whenever in Ethics of Our Fathers it says they said three things, it doesn't mean those are the only three things they said. It means these were the three sayings that they were known by, okay? So the last one is famous. Havedan et kol adam l'chat zchut, judge every person favorably. That's a famous Torah teaching. It's attributed to him. The second one is also interesting. You're supposed to acquire for yourself a friend. And what do you think that means? It doesn't mean a Facebook friend.
Somebody who cares.
Truly cares. And the fact that he uses the word acquire would mean what? It takes effort. Meaning it doesn't happen on itself. You must invest in the friendship in order to have a friend on this level. Someone once told me that a good definition of this kind of friend is someone you'd feel comfortable thinking out loud in front of.
Wow.
Also,
That's it, right? How's that for a definition?
Yeah. Would not be afraid to tell you what you need to be told.
Good.
And you would accept that from them because you are friends.
Correct. That's good. That's a true friend is comfortable to do that. I like that. But what I'm focusing on here is the first part. Aseh lecha rav. Create for yourself a mentor or a teacher or a master, okay? He advises every single person to get for yourself a rav. Now, what's interesting is, who appoints the rav?
Not you.
No, you do.
You choose
Meaning
your
you
own.
can choose someone that you feel is right for you. That's not someone else's job to say, hey, I'm your mentor, or it's not some you appoint. And guess what? If you don't feel they're cut out for you, what can you do?
Get another.
Now, if you're changing your rav every third day, it probably is a sign that you're not really looking it for the right reason. You want to hear the answer that you want to hear, right? So that doesn't work. But the notion, aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a mentor. Now, rav means rabbi, and here it says master, but it also means mentor, someone that you can chew off big decisions with. And this was something that the Rebbe pleaded.
I didn't realize it was he that kept me in business.
Who? Oh, yeah. There we go. So the Rebbe, on many different occasions, would plead to his Hasidim. Text 20. Do you mind reading, Marty? 12a. Thank you.
Our sages said in the Mishnah, assume for yourself a rav. In other words, every Jew is responsible to accept upon him or herself a mentor, follow their instructions. The reason for this is because a person is predisposed to himself, and accordingly he cannot trust himself. Therefore, he must appoint a rav, a person who he will consider greater than himself, and follow his instructions.
It doesn't mean you can never trust yourself. Let's not take these words. Often the Rav's job will be to reveal in yourself how you really have the right answer inside of you. But the Rav will help you get rid of perhaps those biases and have you have an honest look at what is best for yourself. And I love this because it's a beautiful mix on one end of having a higher authority, but on the other hand, you choosing who that is, and it's someone that works for you. And if it no longer works for you, you go to someone else. And I think this is a very good mix of getting guidance, but at the same time making sure it's always in a way that is right for you and your family as well. And the Rebbe would say, 12b, even if a person feels that they're greater in matters of Torah and fear of heaven, and therefore, I can't find someone greater. Who's going to advise me? I don't know. It says that when Rabbi Yeshua taught, assume for yourself a Rav, it means everyone. There's no one that's excluded from this. Everyone needs to be able to do this. The Rebbe said, even if you have not found someone that you feel is greater, it can be less than yourself. That's not the point. There has to be an objective opinion when it comes to do this. And God said, and then the Rebbe finishes off, from time to time they should go to that Rav, assess where they are in their divine service, and doing so will surely spur an increase in all positive and holy matters for every Jew, constantly increasing in positivity, because A, we can be biased, and B is the same way when it comes to business. A lot of people will have, as you said, Hal, a coach that will make sure that they're not just on status quo often, and they're pushing themselves. Right? So the same thing the Rebbe is saying spiritually as well. We need to be able to have someone that we can talk to get the guidance and the encouragement, and sometimes push us. Now, a separate class would be when you are that Rav, and all of us in some capacity are that Rav to someone. How do you guide the person? And how do you allow them to realize things for themselves, so on and so forth? You
might be predisposed yourself as a Rav.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a good
So
point. And then the Rav says, in this matter, And I should point out something else the Rebbe also said, there doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all. In different areas of life, you can have, a family issue might be different than, a business issue.
Or a health issue.
So, and then there's the idea of a family Rav, and that's someone, perhaps their times. It actually works both ways. There is the importance of an individual Rav, because we all have our own, even within a marriage and family, we all have our own spiritual growth that we have to have as an individual. But then there are decisions that are being made for the purposes of the family that involve everyone, and that's a different discussion as well. So those are two different things.
Does Rav has to be Jewish?
Well, when it comes to Torah ideas,
Yeah.
But, you know, like,
it would be, but
your
business
mentor,
advice,
you know?
correct, business mentor. would
So
not
where's
have to
the
do it.
course on being a Rav?
Good one.
We don't even have courses.
What I
on-
meant is today's class was not that perspective.
Mm.
Today's class, where's the class on how to be a Rav?
Oh,
But there are these sort of leadership sessions. Absolutely, those exist. Those exist. So just the take home over here was, according to Rabbeinu Bachaya, why was it that Moshe did not answer the question himself? He had some bias in the fact that they said our dad was not someone who rebelled with you. He was loyal. And once he heard that, he said, you know what? I want a neutral party to be able to take it on. And the lesson for us is, if Moshe did that, how much more so in our own lives? We have to be careful of being objective. And if that's true when it comes to other people, how much more so is it when it comes to our own decisions and the benefit of having someone else to be able to advise us and guide us and mentor us in our own growth in all areas of life. Questions? Online community, are there any questions?
No, and Debbie had to leave.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, those that were listening. Please, if there are any questions or comments that you have, suggestions to make the online experience better, I would love to hear about it. You can email me directly at my initials, YC, at chabadofcary.org, YC@chabadofcary.org. I would love to hear from you. And a big thank you again to Amnon Nissan and Nissan Communications for hosting our Lunch and Learn every single week. Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful week.
I have a comment about.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCBVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.